second part of what I was going to talk about, cosmology and the Bible. And I don't know whether there'll be a part 3, but it's nice to look at the realities that surround us, isn't it? So here we are. How did it all begin? That's a stupid question, because it was the Big Bang, wasn't it? You'll ask anybody, and that is what they tell you. Everything started from an implosion and concentration through exorbitant gravitational forces, where all the matter of the universe came together, and it started to circle and circle, and spinning so fast that ultimately so much heat was generated, and it just completely exploded, and voila, there is the universe. And if you're happy with that explanation, then you are easier pleased than me. How did it all begin? Well, you know, the Big Bang, as we said. How long? Yeah, 13.7 billion years, planet Earth, and our solar system 4.3 billion. What is it based on? Where is the evidence? Nowhere. There isn't. I've never had a satisfactory answer on the computation, how we get to 13.7 on the duration of since the Big Bang. And as far as our solar system is concerned, I have never had an explanation that is satisfactory that it formed 4.3 billion years ago. Just none. So I have nothing to convey to you on that basis. The question is intriguing. Why so long ago? Let's not worry for a moment about the 0.7 on the 13 billion years. Do you know how long 13 billion years is? It's crazy. 1,000 years is significant, wouldn't you say? 1 million years is astronomical. And then you multiply it by another 1,000. Crazy stuff. Really, how do you... No way of computing that. Question. But it sounds impressive, doesn't it? It's in the textbooks. Why so long ago? Here is the answer. The answer is very, very simple. The answer is to facilitate the theory of evolution. How many of you were here last week? Let me see your hands. Come on, how many of you were there? That's a fair... You remember the interview with Richard Dawkins and Ben Stein, the senior correspondent from CNN? Yeah, no, that's all right. Okay. Did God create the stars on day 4 of creation week? I want to talk about that. I know I talked about it last week. It's important that everybody knows this. Firstly, Genesis 1, verse 16. And God made the 2 great lights. What are they? There is an adverbial sentence. The greater light, that's the sun to rule the day. The lesser light to rule the night, and that's the moon. And then you have this little appendix, literally translated. That's how it should read. Now, in most of your translations, I said that already to you, he made the stars also. And do you know that that actually is a good translation, even though he made and also are not in the Hebrew? But it is a good, because it expresses the ambit of the Hebrew. Why is it that we can observe the light from millions of light years away? So we see galaxies that are millions of light years away. How many stars in the Milky Way? Let me see how much you listened last week. How many stars, that means suns like ours, in the Milky Way? Huh? I've got 100 billion and I'll take that. How many galaxies?
We don't know.
I like that one too. The estimate, according to modern science. How many galaxies?
We don't know.
Oh, you're not a fast learner, you are. 100 billion galaxies. 100 billion times 100 billion is 10 to the power of 22. We'll come to that later on. That's how many suns there are. And where you have a sun, you would have a planetary system, like our sun. Most likely, not always, of course. So how do you explain that? Now, you've got to look at the sentence. And I explained to you that the arrangement of words and phrases to create a well-formed sentence in a language is what's meant by syntax. And they are divided in 3 main groups. Firstly, in this one, God is the subject, the one performing the action. Made is actually the action, that's the verb. And the object of the creation is, of course, of the action of the subject are the two great lights. And really, the stars also. Are you with me so far?
Yeah.
Now, it's very fascinating when you look at it. If the Hebrew writer wanted to express that God made the stars on day 4, that would mean, so we talk about the stars, we talk about 100 billion times 100 billion, 10 to the power of 22. We are talking about a massive explosion of creation on day 4. Is that biblical? It's not about whether God can do it or not. That's not the issue. That doesn't come into the equation. But how come, if that is the case, it's only 6,000 years ago, that we can see light that was created over there 6,000 years ago, millions of light years, and we can see it here now on planet Earth. Are you seeing the dilemma? No? I hope so. I get that argument all the time with evolutionists. How can you see something that was over there and still is, but has been there for millions of years, and I've only been here for 6,000 years? The light travels, speed of light, 300,000 kilometers a second. We're talking light years. So if the light started there millions of years ago, it takes millions of years to reach me. But how can I reconcile that if I've only been here 6,000 years and we all came into being at the same time? Do you understand what I'm saying? Folks? The argument is really very, very serious. We can only go by what we observe. And I hear creation scientists explaining how the light got here within that time. That's not true. It's not reality. I don't care how fast you make it. Abraham looked up and he saw the stars. What he looked at is the same starry sky that we see today. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's about 4,000 years ago. It cannot be. It is an impossibility. It is a physical dilemma that cannot be defended. Do you understand why I make a fuss about this? Yeah, good. Now, let's have a look. If the writer wanted to suggest that the stars were made on day 4, he would say, and God made the two great lights and the stars. But that's not how he put it. Proper, easy syntax. Subject, action, verb. No problem. In the Hebrew, it is different. This is what it is. And the stars, and this is all in Hebrew. So I have the sentence here, and made God the two lights great. That's how it's literally translated. And God made the two great lights. Here, Ve'et HaKochavim is and the stars. And I pointed out that a part of this, and I'm not sure whether you got this, this is actually, the white one is a direct object link, which means that it is the only words I need to reproduce that is this one, that's Ve, that is and Kochavim is the plural of the stars. This is an object link that connects it with the verb down there. In the Hebrew you have a different order. Well, the older Hebrew. And so this one is vas, is really the actual verb, the sentence. This connects and stars, the is not needful in the Hebrew, this connects it with this verb. What the author was saying, God made the two great lights, it's day 4. And then you get what's called an adverbial sentence, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. That qualifies it. But what rules also at the night? Well, the stars. And he wants you to understand that the stars were made by God also. Do you understand? You only see the stars at night. But and the Hebrew does not compel you to believe that God created the stars on day 4, 6,000 years ago. In fact, the syntax, the order, deviates from that very intent and only wishes to express that God created the stars also, but they rule by night. You with me? This is very important. If the universe is only 6,000 years old, I ought to be able to defend it from what I see, but I can't. That's my point. All observations point to a very old universe in a sense. I don't know how old. I can't tell you that. Our solar system is different. I'm going to find the evidence that the solar system is quite young. You understand what I'm saying? It means that our solar system and the universe were not created at the same time, even though we're part of the universe. We were not created at the same time. Are you with me? Yeah. That's important. I hope they get to it to show you why it is important. Richard Dawkins admits nobody knows how it started. This is about the whole of evolution. Richard Dawkins accepts an intelligent designer. Now look where we have common ground. He accepts an intelligent designer, a higher being, somewhere in the universe, who is responsible for the origin, for the first self-replicating molecule, a higher intelligence, which designed a form of life and seeded that on this planet. You know, him and I are not far apart in what we believe. I can believe all of the above. Yeah? The first statement isn't true. How did it start? Well, go to the Bible and you'll have the only source that is reliable. That is what I believe. But it's amazing when you study the account, what it contains. So far, we can see that. The question is this, the question begs this. How does this higher intelligence come into being? So he believes in design, which normally is a terrible word for any evolutionist. He said he believes in a higher intelligence, which for an atheist is unthinkable. He believes that it was seeded on this planet from somewhere else. If what is seeded on this planet lives and thrives here, then you must reckon that the place of origin must also be a place very much like this. Wouldn't you say that? So you're looking for a planet. You don't look for a sun because it gets burned up. Correct? Everybody with me here? Okay. Now, question. How did this higher intelligence come into being? The answer that Dawkins gave was along Darwinian ways. That's the only way. By some Darwinian means, over a very long time. That's why they need a Big Bang 13.7 billion years ago and a planetary system that is 4.3 billion years old. Get it? Time. Just give it time. And time will bring it about. Do you understand what we are getting at here? I hope so. I hope so. Now, this is an artist's impression. Let's talk about, and we did that last week, a bit more before we get into other stuff. I want to look again at that seeding possibility. So if you look at our planetary system, and I'll put them all on the board, so there is Mercury, of course that is Venus, planet Earth, Mars, that is Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Now, if you look at any of those, it is impossible for any of them. Last week they perceived that there was some water, frozen water on Mars. It's only got 1/100 of the atmosphere. Life there is impossible. Now, when you look at our planets of the solar system, none of them could have ever sustained, begun, supported a biological life of which we are a part in any form, shape, or otherwise. It just hasn't. It just can't. You can forget about the last 4. There's no the slightest possibility. The best candidate would be Mars. But like I said, there's no atmosphere to speak of. There is no oxygen in gas form. And it certainly would be already far too cold. And there is nothing, nutrients, nothing that we know that could support organic life. Planet Earth happens to, I often wonder, before I forget, when I look at those planets, and they don't line up, they're all over the place, but they don't bump into each other. when you look at the planets, and if it came from the hand of God, maybe God is trying to tell us something. Maybe God is trying to tell us that unless I make it, you're not going to live there. You understand? God is trying to tell us when you look at all the other ones. I mean, look at Jupiter. Fascinating. Mainly helium and hydrogen like the sun. Emits twice the amount of energy that it receives from the sun. It's shrinking. It would have to. I'll talk about the rings of Saturn. It's quite interesting. Saturn is also a young planet. We know that. Has to be. Now, planet Earth. The distance from the Earth. Look at all the different, have a look at that. That is an awful lot of distance, 4.3 billion to the furthest one away. That's Neptune. That is a huge distance. Billions of kilometers. Boy, how do you do that? In fact, if you travel at the speed as did Voyager, nowadays we can go up close to 40,000 kilometers an hour with space. But look at that. It takes you with that, the Voyager took these sort of time frames, and here, at 9.5 years, you will have to take your long service leave if you try to go there for your holiday. And of course, your problem is also you've got to come back as well. Of course, that's another problem. But can you see what we're having here, the distances? Enormous, enormous. Why are the 9 planets so different from each other and from us? How can it be if there was a Big Bang? Wouldn't you expect a uniformity between them? Would have to be. There isn't. The opposite is true. It's incredible. I explained to you on the conservation of angular momentum that as it would have exploded, everything would have to rotate the same way. And I noted the exceptions of the planetary system and their moons that they don't, which is against the Big Bang theory. Mercury and Venus and Earth and Mars have less than 1% helium. I want to talk about that in a minute because that has an awful lot to do with the age of our planet. I'll talk about that in a minute. Comets. Let's talk about comets. Our solar system is quite young, no question about it. The Bible does not compel us to believe that the whole universe was created at the same time, namely day 4. Yeah? That's not what the Bible tells us. So, what we have is called the Kuiper Belt. After a man, you would say Gerard Kuiper. Gerard Kuiper is the Dutch. He is a Dutchman. A Dutchman, he lived in America and worked there, but the Kuiper Belt is named after a Dutchman. I want you to remember that. What is the Kuiper Belt? Well, the Kuiper Belt is supposed to be this. A proposed source of short-term comets. What are short-term comets? Well, ones that survive about 200 years. And then they burn up, because as they go around the sun, and they're pulled in perhaps more by the gravitational pull, but even if they stayed where they are, every time the sun radiation is the frosting of which the comets are made of, which is really ice and dirt. And so they diminish until they're completely dissolved. 200 years would be a max for this reported presence that has kept feeding the system but has no hope of being 4.3 billion years old. No hope. The computations say 10,000 max. If you base it on what comes from the Kuiper Belt. Here is another problem for the Kuiper Belt. It's never been observed. In other words, it is theoretical. Did you get that? Why do they do that? Well, they do that because that would be a natural solution to the problem that keeps feeding the system. But they already know even that system is faulty and couldn't put you beyond 10,000 years. It just couldn't. It just couldn't. I just want you to remember the Dutchman, okay? It is believed to consist of debris too small to form planets, so it's just debris and they turn into comets. Now this is more complicated, I'm sorry about that, but the rest is simple. Here is the sun, planet Earth. Forget about Mercury and Venus. So we have Mars, Jupiter, okay, Saturn, Neptune, and then we included Pluto. The Kuiper Belt is here. Do you understand that? Okay, then you get some what they call interstellar medium. Don't worry too much about it. You go all the way there, all the way there, all the way there. Whoops. We come to another, what shall I say, another galaxy. But it's a small one. And Alpha Centauri or Proxima Centauri is like a dwarf, sun, and it has at least one planet or maybe more. So life could have come from that. Now, remember Richard Dawkins. He said that life came from outer space. My argument was that if that's organic life that we can identify with because it's a makeup, then it must be under a condition, a planetary condition that you and I live on, which supports it and keeps it not only alive, but allows it to develop. Evolve is the word, yeah. So if it's not in our solar system, then it must be outside our solar system. Because a planet that is not supported by a sun is not surviving with anything on it or in it. So here we have a galaxy, a very small galaxy. This is 10 to the power of 5. That word down there is not the abbreviation for Australia. That is an astronomical unit. What is an astronomical unit? That is from planet Earth to the sun. That is 150 million kilometers. So 150 million kilometers times the power, even if you want it to be on this side, to the 10th to the power of the 5th. You work it out tomorrow when you have a day off, okay? Just work it out. Which is really, let me have a look. Alpha Centauri, that is but just over 4 light years away. That is traveling at the speed of 300,000 kilometers a second, not an hour, a second. We can only go as fast, max 40,000 kilometers an hour. That is a huge difference. Why am I telling you this? How does it help you in your relationship with God? That's God's handiwork. You're looking at. You can get to know a person by what they do, isn't it? Or how they do it. Doesn't the psalmist say, declares the glory of God? Another word for glory is character. Yeah? That's true. Here, have a look at this name here. The Oort Cloud. Evolutionists, seeing the dilemma of the Kuiper Belt, have come up with another solution. They've turned to the Oort Cloud, much bigger, much further away. But there it is. This is, in that distance from the sun, it survives, you see, it survives, they say. Computations say that a comet from here would survive max 100,000 years, but there's one catch. I'll come to that in a minute. Back to the origin of life if it was seeded. If it was the nearest planet to our solar system, say it was, and nobody can say whether it was, and it wasn't, I can say that. How do you travel from there to there to there to there to there to planet Earth? 4 light years. And then drop it off and let it all happen. Am I asked to believe that? Do you understand what I'm saying? There is an absence of evolutionary process in the fossil records. The whole paleontology doesn't support them. So now you have a problem. Not only do you have you created a transportation problem by saying, oh, it didn't start here, it started over there. No. How do you survive organic life that way? Traveling, well, it depends on your capacity of speed. Even if it was a higher intelligence in the sense of a higher civilization, I hate to put a figure on it. You still have a problem with the origin. Do you remember that the self-replicating cell, which is really a molecule in a sense, with all the information that you need to get all the diversity of organic life that we know, the odds are 1 chance in what? 10 to the 100 to the power of 160. And the Eugene Girl, the Swiss mathematician, worked this one out. And it is generally agreed that 10 to the power of 50, after that you have plain nonsense. It an impossibility. Do you understand? No matter what you bring into the equation, it cannot happen. That's 10 to the power of 50. We have 10 to the power of 160. For a biological cell, created by God, by the way. God created every biological cell that has ever existed and will exist. The wonderful thing is, as science progresses, it's not pulling us away from God. It should be pulling us towards God. Do you understand? If that is the impossibility, out with the evolutionary theories. And in with the notion of a creator. That makes sense? Okay, back to comets. I like comets. Comet is a celestial object consisting of a nucleus of ice and dust. And so when it nears the sun, a tail of gas and dust particles is pointing away from the sun. So the sun would be on your left as it travels, you understand. They can't survive for billions of years. That is a load of rubbish. The 4.3 is just totally out of order. Comets supposed of the Oort Cloud. Remember the Oort Cloud I showed you on the outside? Do you remember that? You were looking, weren't you? You weren't sleeping? No. No, good. So remember those? But if you compute that, at best it could last 100,000 years. That's a far cry from a solar system 4.3 billion years. Now here comes the other one. The problem is the Oort Cloud theory was totally demolished by Raymond Littleton. Beautifully demolished. The guy who invented the Oort Cloud, his name is Jan Oort, another Dutchman. Totally fictitious, totally hypothetical. Even if you forget everything what you learned this afternoon, there's one thing you should remember. Don't you just believe a Dutchman what he says. The current company excluded. Okay. Now, he demolished it, and there is the reference, and it's an excellent paper. If the solar system was billions of years old, there would be no comets left. The fact remains, even at short-term comets, it's less than 10,000 years. Comets are the evidence of a new solar system. Young solar system. Saturn, I promised you Saturn. Here's another. Larry Esposito is actually an atheist. He is an evolutionist. He wrote a book, The Changing Shape of Planetary Rings. Why did he do that? Let me explain it to you. Voyager 1, 1977, the 5th of September. It took 6.5 years to get to the area here of Saturn. He noted the information that was sent back, that the information confirmed that this was a young phenomenon. So we're talking only thousands of years. But he's an evolutionist. He believes in the Big Bang. And so he commented in this paper, he commented on this, he said that the rings of Saturn were quite young. He admitted that. He didn't want to say that the planet was quite young. Why not? Because he's an evolutionist. You can't say that as an evolutionist. Question here is very simple. How do you get the rings in orbit unless you have the gravitational pull of a planet like Jupiter or Saturn? You can't. The ring and the planet must have been there virtually the same time. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's logical. It's just logical. Another good example of a young solar system. This one, I mentioned this last week, that the moon, and that's a scientific fact, moves away about just under 4 centimeters a year. So 1.4 billion years from today, and the distance that the moon has, if you bring it back at 4 centimeters, obviously a year, if you go on the law of uniformitarianism, which is what evolutionists do, it's up their alley, then it would be touching the Earth. Now, this is huge problems for this planet, but let's say it did. So they say that the moon must have been part of an Earth, and it went in all the textbooks, and you can still find it. The problem was when in 1968 they brought back the moonstones The density of a moonstone, the specific gravity is 3.3 gram per cubic centimeter, and here the density works out 5.5. That is a significant difference. Can you see that? There's no way, within variations, there is no way that could be the same matter. No way. The moon did not come from planet Earth. And yet that is what they believed. And so you'd say, how would they postulate the moon to come into existence? Oh, well, there's a solution for that. It's very theoretical. Nobody was there. A big object, massive asteroid, sort of the size of Mars. It hit the planet Earth, and it just broke off many pieces, which later formed the sun. How it formed the sun? There's no process, there's no model, there's nothing. And you would think if a lump like that, 1/6 of the mass, was bumped off the Earth, it would show somewhere, wouldn't it? Well, you can travel anywhere you like, it's not there. It also would knock the Earth out of orbit. Anyway, never mind. Never mind that. This is all rubbish. So, at the present rate of separation, so we have 1.4 billion years if we go back. So we're 1.4 in the 4.3, that leaves us 2.9 billion years. You know, as the moon would have left after the first 1.4 billion years, you wouldn't see it by now. There's no way that in 2.9 billion years, the moon traveling at 4 centimeters a year away from planet Earth, that you could eyeball that, would visualize that. There is no way. Firstly, it would be too small, and secondly, it wouldn't get the light because it hasn't got light by itself. It needs it from the sun. Are you with me? Two reasons why you couldn't. Oh, hang on. I like this one. Discrepancies in the radiometric dating. Oh, this is funny. So they bring back the rocks. So what do? If you're a geologist and you're a believer in a long ages, you go to radiometric date to rocks, don't you? And the rocks of the moon and the Earth would have to be the same, you see? They would have to be the same. That makes common sense. The problem is, there are immense... I'm very tempted to do half a talk, or at least, on radiometric dating, but I'm going to talk about something else next week. No, not this one. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Because I know I'm throwing a lot of facts and figures at you. But I'm sick and tired of these magazines, science magazines, programs on television, Mr. what's his name, that we're talking about billions and millions of years. I'm tired of it. It's not true. It's not science. They're telling porkies. That is what they're doing. It is not supported. So you need to know. So radiometric dating, so what they dated here on Earth, and rubidium, strontium, potassium, argon, and a lot of others, do you know that none of them matched? They couldn't get them to agree with each other. Big fights amongst the various groups of scientists. Oh, they're still going on. It doesn't match up with planet Earth. It just doesn't. It doesn't. Did you know that the gravity... If the gravity disappeared and we wanted to keep the moon where it is, you'd have to put a steel cable there, and that steel cable would have to be 850 kilometers in diameter, which is a straight line from that side to that side. Otherwise, it would just snap off and go away. That's quite a gravitational force. It's a lot, isn't it? I thought you might like to know that. It's quite interesting. In fact, if you look at this one, this is what the moon does. It makes the tides, yeah? So on this side you get a tide, and somewhat at a lesser degree on the other side, there you get the low tides. If the moon wasn't there, you still have tides, but only 40% from the sun's attraction, basically, gravitational pull. Even the sun has less than half this effect, 40% in fact, and the effect of the other planets, you can forget about that. It's interesting. It's functional. The moon is functional. So now the helium. Remember I wanted to talk about the helium. Zircon crystals actually contain quite a few, like some of the rocks, the igneous rocks, that these are all with radioactive decay, like uranium and thorium. They all contain lots of helium, which over time is dissolved and comes out. Now this is the interesting part. They measure the rate of helium. Helium is the second lightest gas. The lightest is hydrogen. Helium is also a very noble gas. That's what they call it, a noble gas. It doesn't connect with other atoms, so they're very easy to identify. Measured rates of helium diffusion, and they've done many, and I can give you references if you're interested. Just Google them. An average diffusion rate is approximately, isn't it funny, 6,000 years. If the Earth was millions of years old, we should have no helium, and all should have evaporated in the atmosphere. And it goes right to the outer core because it's so light. Get it? How do you explain that? How do you explain that we still have rock that contain helium at quite high doses? And particularly the zircon crystals are a very fine example of that. It couldn't happen. It 6,000, give or take 1,000 or 2,000 years, that's it. The universe we see, when we look at furthest horizons, contain 100 million galaxies. Each of these galaxies contain another 100 billion stars. We said that, billions, 100 billion stars, that's 10 to the 22nd, already quoted that. The formation of stars is one of the most fundamental problems in astrophysics. Ward Thompson was, of course, a scientist. He said we have a problem in the astrophysics here because no current model can reproduce all the observations. So you see what you see of a sun, and we don't really, it's still a riddle to us. And there are billions and billions and billions of it. We don't really know how they actually came about. Lots of theories, but they can't, well, obviously reproduce it. They can't obviously observe it. They can only guess it. How do they come into being? There is not really a clear answer. Fascinating. And we've got trillions of them. Our solar system is quite young, but the universe is quite old. That is the point of the talk here this afternoon. You're not compelled to believe that the universe was created on day 4, so you can be belittled and ridiculed by any atheist or evolutionist. It's not what the Bible teaches. I'm just putting it to you as it is. Get it? But that this solar system is young, yes, that I can defend. This planet Earth, part of that solar system, it's no problem. He said because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself. Now note the next one. Out of? We believe the same, no, not anymore, he's dead, but passed away not so long ago. We believe in something or everything coming out of nothing. Do you? Yeah. But what you need is a creator. Like God. A higher civilization couldn't do it. But God can. God was not dependent on matter to create. He created matter. And therefore energy. And you know what? God says, I'm the first cause. And any cause must be greater than its effect. And God is. He transcends it. This guy, you might have seen him on debates and what have you, Lawrence Krauss, avowed atheist, an evolutionist, cosmologist, and quantum physics. There is no quantum theory of gravity. Oh, that's interesting. No quantum theory. There's no way you can explain gravity. We only know what it does. But please explain. Will never be answered. We don't know. He admits that. So I can't tell you for certain how space comes into existence. So never mind what we have in the universe, how do you create a universe? That's your first problem. This guy, the next one, takes the cake. Edward Bittar, again, an atheist evolutionist. In answer to the question of why it happened, space coming into existence, universe coming into existence, I offered a modest proposal that our universe is simply one of those things which happen from time to time. There's your explanation. That doesn't help me. And it doesn't help you either. So, I like what he says. Alan Sandage, staff member emeritus of the Carnegie Observatories in Pasadena, California. He said this: why is there something rather than nothing? He says, look, he was an evolutionist and he turned around. It was my science that drove me to the conclusion that the world is much more complicated than can be explained by science. He said, it is only through the supernatural that I can understand the mystery of existence. It is true. It is the supernatural. God is supernatural. Yeah? It's the only way. So why was the universe not created in day 4? What's the time? Huh? Oh, no, I don't want to finish too early. Here. Why am I so fussed about this? That the solar system is not millions of years old. The first meeting somewhere in the universe. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. Okay. So, you see, God has open communion, and He invites you to be a part of that once everything is restored, and we will be. Now, the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, the sons of God. This is the Lord, that's His personal name. So it's very personal. And Satan came amongst them, and here is something very interesting when you look at it. And the Lord said to Satan, where do you come from? Now, he knew where he came from. He didn't say it to any of the other sons of God. Why? Because the other sons of God were legally there. Satan was there illegally. What God was saying, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And he's going to defend it. Now, you look at the text and the story and the narrative, and it'll tell you. He says, from going to and fro on the earth. You find that expression also in Daniel 12. That's examining. Yes, I've examined the earth. Look at the earth. Look at the earth. Walking to and forth. That's a parallelism of having explored everything. And as far as I'm concerned, he says, I am the representative of the world. They do what I tell them. That's it. That's the whole argument. And then God says, have you considered my servant Job? He says he's not like him on the earth, blameless, upright, who fears God and shuns evil. Satan was not a representative of Job, and there might have been quite a few more. In fact, the name Job means what? Hated. Job means hated. By whom? Satan hated Job. Because he disqualified him as the true representatives of this planet, like the other gods were, the other sons of God were representing their planets. Are you with me? Okay. Does Job, then he goes on accusing, that's what you do. Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, around all that he has? The whole argument is about this, what I just said. That's what the whole argument is about. You blessed him, terrible, terrible things. You blessed him, and his possessions have increased in the land. So Job is accused, God is accused. Job knows which side his bread is buttered. You know, it pays to follow God. You know, that's the only reason. And God, well, God will buy you. Are you with me? This is what he is suggesting, and that's what the book of Job is really about. Now, stretch for your hand, preferably your hand, touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. Now, you know the story. So then, in the end, Job sticks to his integrity and his relationship with God, but he wants an answer. He really wants an answer. He gets an answer, but not the one that he was asking for. He'll get that later on in the resurrection after. God comes to him and he says, now let me tell you who I am. The problem we have with God is that we have the problem we don't know how great God is. That's our problem. That's our problem. And so who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundation fastened? Have a look at the language. Now this is a structure language. This is a physical structure. Now let me ask you a question. We're talking about planet Earth because that's where Job lives. So, what would you say? What we're talking about here is that in the beginning of creation, is it halfway, progressive creation, or is it at the finish of creation? Where would you place that? Oh, silence. Okay, let me put it to you in a different way. Now, this building. What am I going to build first? What am I going to do first? I'm going to do the foundations first. I'll put a line, that's what they used to do in building, now it's all electronic, and I'm going to make sure I measure everything and that I can do it. Is that true? Yeah, that's true. A cornerstone that has most of the weight. I'm just starting, aren't I? I would say you wouldn't be on day 4, would you? Because in day 4, we already have atmosphere, we already have separation from water horizontally. There's already green, grass, trees, every shrubs, it's all there. Now we're on day 4 and we're supposed to create the whole of the universe. You understand? If you take it literally. But you can't, because when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Who are the morning stars? You'll find they are a nomination for angels. And I'm not going to go to all the comparisons, it takes too long. The sons of God that were meeting with God, and always have been, by the way, since they were created, their worlds were created, are the representatives of other worlds. In other words, other worlds were created before this. Do you understand? So when they sing for joy, when the planet is to be made, is just being fashioned, they are there already. In other words, the universe containing them, because they're not in our solar system, the universe containing them has been there for a long, long time. How long? No idea. Guess it? No. Thanks. Billions of years? Good. Well, you know, if I go by the traveling of light, yeah. But the Bible is silent on the issue. It tells us there are other worlds. There's a heaven. Angels live in heaven. They go up and down all throughout the universe. They have intergalactic capacity beyond our understanding, but they have it. Just because we can't understand it doesn't mean they haven't got it. Yeah. War broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragons. This is interesting. Michael, of course, the Hebrew name Michael. Mi is who, Cha, like, El is the singular for God. It's the name of the great controversy. Who is like God? This is it. The dragon, we know who the dragon is because you'll see it in a minute. They fought, his angels, they did not prevail. And what happened? Nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. This is what he's doing now. He was cast to the earth. You know, many people I speak to, they believe that God sent Satan to the earth. Why did God send Lucifer to the earth? He didn't. Very true. Because this is not, let me give you an expression. Somebody comes to me with a proposal. I look at it and I throw it out of the window. What am I trying to tell you? Not interested. I'm throwing nothing out of the window. Casting down means just that. It means a rejection. He was ejected. Ah, yes, there's no question. He was thrown out. But he was thrown out before the world was created. God never sent him to this world because the world wasn't there yet. Are you with me? I think that's important. Jesus said to the Pharisees, he said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. So Satan was expelled before the creation of this planet. I think that's important. God didn't land an enemy on our doorstep, front door. He didn't. And that helps me in understanding God. That's all I say. The worldview of the Bible today to Jesus is about 2,000 years. And then from Jesus to Abraham is about 2,000 years. From Abraham to creation or Adam is about 2,000 years. And that, you know, you can go to the genealogies. You can't fiddle the figures. It's about 6,000 years. You with me? Okay. That's the biblical view. That's the world view of the Bible. Now consider this. The Earth's gravity. Don't know what it... There's no quantum theory. But it's there. The Earth's gravity, without it we wouldn't be here. We couldn't survive. The axial tilt, which gives you the seasons. I was going to talk about that, but not today. Rotation period, 24 hours is just perfect for our flora and fauna. The magnetic field is still, I showed you last time, the magnetic field is still strong enough to repel the solar radiation that would really shorten or exterminate our lives. The von Allen belt, I talked about that last week. The crust thickness is just right. The oxygen-nitrogen ratio is perfect. The carbon dioxide level is fascinating because it facilitates what we call the photosynthesis, where the energy is taken up, given by the sun, and the carbon is incorporated in the plant. Water vapor density, you need it for the greenhouse effect to create a suitable atmosphere. Ozone layers are just right, expelling or resisting the short-term ultraviolets. You look at all this, there's far more, it's far more. But I've got to stop here. What I'm trying to say, when you look at everything, our location in the planetary system, our distance from the sun, the moon, the distance from us. The moon was 10% closer. We would have tidal waves every day. Not tides, tidal waves. And if it was 20% closer, you will have massive tsunamis. You know, everything is balanced. It is a design. It is someone who put it together. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. You see, the invisible attributes of God is his eternal power and Godhead. And how do you see it? You can see it in the provisions that he has made, so organic life, particularly life like ours, can exist on this planet at this location. Can you see that? Paul said, they have no excuse. They should know. The fool said in his heart, there is no God because he is corrupt. Are atheists nasty people? No, not necessarily. Well, until you tell them you believe in the six-day creation. No, that's not true. They are corrupt in their thinking. It's away from the truth. That's where the corruption is. Nice people. I have atheists as friends. They're atheists. Still. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God, they are corrupt. The heavens declare the glory of God, and this is so true, and the firmament show his handiwork. And when there's no mistakes in the Bible. Look at this. The worldview about the scripture is that it is mythological. No, it's not. It's true effect. The Bible does not say that the universe is small. The Bible doesn't say that the universe is geocentric. The Bible uses the language of observation, meaning the sun goes down, the sun comes up. We all use that. The Bible states that the earth is round, long before it was accepted. The Bible says that the earth hangs in space, not carried by Mr. Atlas standing on two elephants. And the Bible says that God is the first cause, which means he's greater than the effect that we can observe. Christianity and science are perfectly compatible. Have you ever people that say, you see, evolution tells you what to think, but it never tells you how to think. It doesn't. It really doesn't. It tells you what to believe, but not how you can prove it. If the Bible is to be rejected because it is man-made, have you ever had people say that? Yeah, the Bible is written by people. Yeah. Well, here's another problem. That logic, a product of man's finding, is just as doubtful, also man-made. Why would you believe that? Why would I believe in an Oort Cloud? Why would I believe in the Kuiper Belt, for argument's sake? Just because they're Dutchman? Huh. It is to be rejected, you see. So this is the final remark. This is it. The Word of God, when you read it, study it, if it doesn't challenge you, I can guarantee you it won't change you. This is my challenge to you. Let the Word of God challenge you. And you never have to doubt. And he'll make all things right. May God bless you.